Welcome in, folks. Great guest today from The Athletic, Nick Baumgardner. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining the show. We're going to talk some Chiefs and your take on the draft class. Lot of things going on at The Athletic. Is that the best place for them to find you, or where's the central hub for you?
Yeah, right. Thanks. Yeah, at the Athletic, I'm all over that one right now. A lot of draft stuff going on still there, or post-draft stuff, I should say. And then we're getting a little bit into the 2025, not too much. But then also on Twitter, just at Nick Baumgardner, YouTube at Nick Baumgardner, FB, same thing as Instagram as well. So all over those places.
Awesome, awesome. So what's great is I know that you have to run down everything for the whole league. We're going to talk Chiefs specifically here,
Yeah.
so that it's not just my opinion that talks Chiefs every day. So, like for you, when you take a look back at the draft class, obviously a little bit of fireworks, making trades and those kind of things on
Yeah.
day 1 and 2, but there's been a couple of rumors recently, and they did end up getting Kingsley Somalia in the second day, but just recently found out that they were talking to trades to go up, and choose Amarius Mims was kind of their target in the first round, which then when that didn't work out, they came back down to the wide receiver. That's exactly my reaction. So between those two prospects, knowing that they were both high on the Chiefs board, how would you compare them? And are you surprised that they were both on there as targets?
No, not at all. That actually makes a lot of sense. They're very similar players in a lot of ways, and they have similar strengths and weaknesses. Like Mims was a much higher guy on most boards, I think, because frankly, we haven't seen enough of him. Like, I think that he did have a little bit of that mystery to his game where Kingsley had played more, and there's a little bit more of some stiffness there that they're going to have to work on too. But both guys are like elite athletes, terrific testers, like top, like a lot. Some teams had Kingsley, I think, as a fringe first round grade, maybe at least in
Mhm.
January. I don't know how much that went on, but like they're very similar players, I think, and that you could probably play them in multiple spots. I actually think Kingsley could play inside too if you wanted him to. So that worked out probably, I would argue, better for the Chiefs. Getting a guy like Worthy and then going down and then waiting and still getting a player like Kingsley who's probably going to give you, I would imagine, similar things to Mims. If all things work out, both guys need development, both guys need time, but that's not surprising at all. Both guys would serve a need up front for them, give them some more athletic punch, and then eventually, hopefully, give them a good protector there for Mahomes.
That was pretty much my reaction to the
Yeah.
similarities. It makes sense that they're stacked on the board, but the big differentiator for me was the risk. And obviously, like you said, not as much game film for Mims. And honestly, anything that a man that size with that kind of injury history makes me a little bit nervous.
Exactly.
Now, in contrast, Xavier Worthy had some injury history as well. There's the whole weight thing that we've talked about ad nauseum. So when you gauge those two guys, Worthy versus Mims in that case, with the negatives or the risks on their
Right.
evaluations, does it ring true for you that I think this still worked out in the best case scenario that it could have?
It does, because I think that they ended up getting, two birds with one stone, really. Not one stone, but you got two things knocked out that you really needed in this draft in the first two picks. One being, the fastest receiver in the draft. And, I saw some people making I think maybe because they're short and small, the Tyreek Hill comparisons. And it's like those guys are not the same player. However, what Worthy is good at is, resetting and rerunning around. Like, when Mahomes breaks the pocket, he's really good at that. Obviously, he has a lot of speed. And frankly, I think that, we've seen the Chiefs over the years, they've made a lot of guys look like really good receivers that are not as good as they probably are in other places. And this kid's got a lot of talent. I mean, there's some limitations in what you can do with him because of that size. But I thought to get a weapon, really, because that's what I think if you're an offense that has Patrick Mahomes, all you're really trying to do is find speed that that he can't overshoot, which is impossible. So you're just trying to find guys that can do damage after the catch, and I think that they got that, and they also get a guy in Kingsley who some people probably had, and I think they got him at a good price there too, pretty late. That's later than I think a lot of people thought he might go.
Yeah, it certainly was lower than I had him originally as well. And so I know there's a lot to be made about giving up the third round pick and all that. But like you said, job number one, job number two got done. And you're off the board and you feel like you have upside guys that you can bring into your system and improve. That said, I don't think it could have gone better for him then. I think there were a couple of back and forths on day 3. But when you take a look at the class as a whole, with Jaden Hicks, I think the value pick, Wiley as well. How do you feel about what they were able to do as a group?
I love the Hicks pick. Like that was a guy to me that was falling all day on Friday. And I was like, when a couple of safeties went off that day, I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. I think we had Hicks number one on our safety board at the Athletic. And like, I thought, and that was a safety, like a lot of positions this year, was sort of a flavor when it was kind of what you depended on how you felt about it. But at least he was in the top three, I thought, and he fell even further than that. So I thought that was a great grab there. And then the other one that I liked a lot for them was Norzad, the center from Penn State. Um, Penn State's offensive line was really interesting. They didn't play great together all the time, but like sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But I saw them all in testing separately. Like Norzad was at the Shrine Bowl, and he was terrific. He was just terrific in there. Like he really surprised me at how smooth he was. And that was a guy that I remember circling even back then and thinking somebody's going to get a really good player on day three as a future center prospect who may maybe play a little bit of guard too. So I like him a lot too. I like that. And Hansen is another one. CJ Hansen, the kid from Holy Cross, another interior guy that I think a lot of people were in the league were higher on than probably in the media.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought him up. I was going to wait a little bit, but you jumped right to the guy that I'm most intrigued by because I only got like a game and a half of film. One of them was broadcast that was terrible. Somebody shot it on a phone. That was the hardest thing for me is getting his film. But what I saw, I liked, and then I thought he backed it up at the combine. And his athleticism, I think, particularly in the position drills, I think is what probably sealed his value as a day three guy. How did you read him, and did you get a lot more film than I did?
I did, and it was the same. It was a similar kind of deal. A lot of it was some of the postseason stuff. The Shrine, he was there, so you got to see him, size up, and that for me sometimes with the small school guys, you don't want to weigh a lot of that on, on that specific event. But for linemen, sometimes like if they're moving people and they're like doing okay in there, and if it's against a guy from the SEC, I'm like, okay, well, like whatever we saw in film is at least probably legit and it's going to hold up to a degree. And I heard enough people at Shrine that were intrigued by Hanson's versatility, the ability to play a little bit inside, maybe across the board in there. And plus, he's not super long, but I think that maybe some people thought he was long enough to maybe cheat out. So he's a good athlete who's long. And I thought he was doing okay there against competition against higher level players. So I liked him. And seventh round is yeah, a little lower. I thought maybe fifth or sixth even for him. So I think that's actually pretty good value there too.
Yeah, I am on the six myself. He stood out. The one guy that I didn't get a whole lot of look at was Hayden,
Oh yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got all the upside that they're probably looking for, and they're banking on their coaching staff. That how you
Exactly.
read
Yeah.
that pick as well at like 211?
Yeah, that was this corner draft in general. After really, honest to God, after the first two, after Quinyon Mitchell and Terry Arnold, and maybe a couple others, at the top. This cornerback, I think Daniel Jeremiah kept saying it on their broadcast. There, like once you get to the middle of the second round, or really or the top of the third, it was like a complete differential of like, well, I like this corner, and that team likes that guy, and this team likes somebody that no one's ever heard of. So a lot of it was just like, did you fall in love with a guy? I mean, a lot of these guys had similar traits, and all of them have a question mark. All of them have like, well, he doesn't have the great long speed like that's had not great long speed. Like a lot of guys had that this year, but there was a lot of guys who have a lot of savvy, a lot of corners this year played a lot of ball. Like I think there was a lot of guys who had the sixth year. Like a lot of guys who were older. I think he's another one that's older, almost 24. So, a lot of the cornerback picks were about like I think personality. Like if you think you can coach them, and like to your point, like they trust their coaching staff. And it's like if we can't get a kid that's going to listen to us, especially in the defensive backfield, or forget a bad play and move on, it's going to be really tough. So I think that's a big part of the evaluation this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the end, I'm pretty happy with the way that they moved around the board. They were able to get guys that fit their scheme. Nick Baumgardner at the Athletic. Thanks for the time, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Ryan.